The Bible is thought to be an instruction manual to life, a historical look into the beginning and a summary of how it will all end. But where do dinosaurs fit into this biblical timeline? Does the Bible mention these beautiful creatures? Both Albert Einstein and Dr. Martin Luther King share greatly different views, but one thing that they most definitely agree on is science and Bible complement each other. Albert Einstein once said, "Science without religion is lame. Religion without science is blind." And Dr. King stated, "Science investigates. Religion interprets. Science gives man knowledge, which is power. Religion gives man wisdom, which is control. Science deals mainly with facts. Religion deals mainly with values. The two are not rivals." As Bible believers, we have to remember that you cannot squeeze or fit science into God's word. What we have to do is start with the Bible to explain the world around us, including dinosaurs. Mark 10:6, "But from the beginning of the creation, God made them male and female." In other words, there is no evolution. We did not evolve from monkeys as evolutionists conclude. This is Jesus himself speaking to a Pharisee that Adam and Eve were there at the beginning of the creation. Scientists predict dino ages based on their start of their own worldly views. Evolution, Big Bang, so on. Wrong assumptions lead to wrong conclusions. Until the late 1700s or early 1800s, scientists believed that the Earth was a complete couple of thousand years old. Most scientists believe the Bible's time frame of when the Earth was created. But what scientific discovery changed the entire view on the beginning? Nothing. They discovered nothing. Nothing new in the early 1800s to prove otherwise. They had the same rocks and the same fossils. It was not Metro dating that comes into early mid-1900s and is widely inconsistent, but they found nothing. James Hutton and Charles Lyell, with many others, suggested that we do not need Noah's flood to explain the rock layers and fossils. We can explain all of these rock layers and fossils with only natural processes. Different interpretations that starts with assumptions that God's word was wrong about the past and that man's word is a better starting part. What is the motivation in the shift of foundation from God's word? Charles Lyell said in a letter to a friend that his goal was to free science from Moses. Translation, get God out of science. From that point, majority of the scientific community adopted this naturalistic worldly view. But that still doesn't answer the question, where are dinosaurs during this time? Well, the word dinosaur wasn't invented until 1841 by a man named Sir Richard Owens. But the King James Version, which is one of the earliest English translations of the Bible, wasn't translated until around 1611. Bible translations before this time used the word dragon more than 35 times, in many contexts describing dinosaur-like creatures. The word dragon in the Bible translated from the Hebrew word tainan. In Job chapter 40, Job and his philosopher friends just finished over 30 chapters of dialogue trying to explain God and why he would allow hardships in Job's life. Then God shows up in a whirlwind. He tells Job to brace himself like a man and says, "Shall he that contended with the Almighty instruct him?" He proceeds to tell Job to look at all that he had created. And you question me? And then for the next 4 chapters straight, God asks Job 77 rhetorical questions that all have to do with his creations. After describing to Job that he is the master creator of space and earth, God describes 13 of his created animals, such as an ostrich, horse, and deer. Then caps it off the discussion by telling Job about his second grandest creations, Behemoth and Leviathan. In Job chapter 40:15, it reads, "Behold now Behemoth, which I made with thee. He eateth grass as an ox." God is telling Job to behold his creation that he made along with him. Some people believe that the creature described in this text was referring to a hippo or an elephant, because the text reads, "Lo now, his strength in his loins, and his force in his navel of his belly. He moveth his tail like a cedar. His bones are as strong pieces of brass. His bones are like bars of iron. He is the chief of the ways of God, that he made him, can make his sword to approach unto him. Both hippos and elephants are herbivores, but they don't have tails that sway like a cedar tree, and follows it by saying that the snooze of his thighs are tightly knit. A cedar is a large Mediterranean tree, and neither of those animals' tails are compared to that. Paleontologists have learned from muscle attachment locations in their bones that tightly knit structures, behemoth's thighs and hips, actually made his tail sway from side to side, with each step much as a cedar tree does when it sways in the wind. Trail drag marks are rarely found behind sauropods' footprints, indicating their tails were raised while they walked. This creature that God is describing in front of Job is the biggest example of God's creative power of Job to see on this land. Neither a hippo or an elephant would be chief of all animals. Do you think God would tell Job to gird his loins to view an elephant or a hippo? Plus, neither of their tails fit the descriptions in the Bible. And both of these animals have been captured and killed by man throughout history. But God said only Behemoth Creator would approach him, and that he would not be captured by humans when he is on watch. Grass didn't evolve, according to science, until millions of years after dinosaurs were extinct. Check out Job 40 and 15. The behemoth ate grass like an ox. In 2005, researchers found grass in the sauropod corallites in India. Some paleontologists are saying that this will cause a rewrite in our understanding of dinosaur evolution, because evolution holds that grass didn't grow until millions of years after dinosaurs had gone extinct. Even with all of the biblical evidence that Behemoth was a sauropod, some say that it was a mythical creature. But why would God try to display his awesome creative power by describing something that never existed? I could do that. Why would God say that Behemoth was the chief of all living animals after describing still living animals? But if dinosaurs were alive according to the Bible during the time of man, how did we cohabitate and what happened to them? Most scientists say that they turned into birds, which is scientifically impossible. Meteors killed all dinosaurs, but left nothing else alive. They died from indigestion or gassed themselves into extinction, meaning they ate the wrong things and the fart caused the climate change that killed them. But the story of Noah shifts the Bible in a way for humans and dinosaurs. It says on that day, all the springs of the great deep burst forth, and the floodgates of heavens were opened, cracking the crust of the earth, moving catastrophically all over the world, all at the same time, causing catastrophic activities on the global scale that wrecked this whole world. Because of that event, we discovered dead things buried in rock layers and laid up by the waters all over the earth. Guess what we found? What we need to understand about the story of Noah is that his ship was around the size of an 8-mile long train, and that each kind in the Bible is equal to each family level of modern day classification. That means Noah did not take 400 pairs of dogs with him on the ark. He took 2 of the basic kind of animal. There are 1,000 different variations of dinosaurs, but just like there is basic dogs and cat kinds, there are simple basic variations of dinosaur kind. There are 62 at most dinosaur kinds, and you might be thinking, how do you get those animals on an ark being that size? The average size of a dinosaur was around the size of a bison or a cow, and some were small as chickens. We have to remember that all dinosaurs came from eggs, and just like every living other creature, they started off small. God brought young adults to Noah. God brought the dinosaurs to him. But if the Bible happened some 400 years ago, shouldn't we find some heuristic evidence of dinosaurs existing in the not too distant past? Check this video out.
For the last decade, the African island has offered Ray and Christy Rogers a spectacular excavation site. They work in an area of remote grasslands where dinosaur bones literally cover the ground. An ancient graveyard where an unusually large number of dinosaurs died and were entombed by mud flows that preserve their bones.
The preservation is unbelievable. The quality of the material is exceptional. This is a piece of bone from the Madagascar locality. It, in many regards, doesn't even look like a fossil. This is typical of the Madagascar material. It is not heavily stained. It's not been invested with iron, with manganese. It doesn't look like a typical fossil. If you didn't know, you might think you're picking up a cow bone today, a bleached cow bone.
I was looking at this thing thinking, this is really interesting.
It was the inside of the T-Rex bone that fascinated Schweitzer, who made thin sections out of it. And in these cross-sections of fossilized bone, she saw something that she and everyone else had thought was impossible. Round structures that looked like red blood cells. Dinosaur blood cells.
Inside those channels where the blood vessels would have run were these little round red structures that were all kind of lined up like a train, and they were bright red and translucent. Nobody else had seen anything like that before.
The very idea of blood cells in a 70-million-year-old bone was more than unconventional. It was radical.
Nobody was imagining that dinosaurs might have had preserved soft tissues.
Derek Briggs is curator of invertebrate paleontology at the Peabody Museum at Yale University.
So along comes Mary Schweitzer, and she's starting to look inside dinosaur bones and has made this startling discovery about the presence of red blood cells. What was your initial reaction to that?
Oh, I think the same reaction as everybody's, that this was totally improbable. She'd perhaps misinterpreted the evidence or was exaggerating the potential for what she was seeing.
So skeptical at first.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Why do you think it didn't occur to anybody?
Because we have this clear understanding that part of all biological cycles involves decay. I mean, nature is set up to break down that material and recycle it. So it's just improbable that those kinds of very delicate structures would survive, particularly for millions of years.
When you think about it, the laws of chemistry and biology and everything else that we know say that it should be gone. It should be degraded completely. This is not possible. Do it again. We got another piece of bone. We put it in the solution. We waited 2 or 3 or 4 weeks. Looked again, more blood vessels. We must have repeated that with probably 17 or 18 different fragments of bone.
That view is an example of wrong assumptions leads to wrong conclusions. Instead of them questioning the time frame of the dinosaur's existence, the first thing that she questioned was the process of decay. There was a recent discovery in 2004 or 2005 in Argentina. What's so unique about the dinosaur is it's called Dreadnoughtus, which means fear not. But why would they call it that? They found over 70% of this animal from the head down. The largest that they've ever found of any dinosaur remains was 20%, and they build the rest from that. T-Rex were 13 feet tall and roughly 40 feet long maybe. Dreadnoughtus were 65 tons, which is heavier than a 735. And they could really estimate the weight well because of the full-scale structure that they found. That weighs more than 12 African elephants, more than 7 T-Rexes. This thing was 2 stories high, 80 feet long, and its tail alone was longer than a city bus. All of this was amazing, but what's even more amazing is that paleontologists say what was the cause of the death of the Dreadnoughtus. They say it died, as massive as it was, because of a raging torrent or flood, and they found it in quicksand or a sandy area, largely preserved. That's what scientists found. When you think dinosaurs, you can think Bible. You don't have to think millions of years ago. Dinosaurs and evolution do not go together. There's a gap in evolution as to what dinosaurs evolved from, but dinosaurs in biblical records do. Going back to the question, what happened to them? Like I said, they died. They were probably hunted for meat. They were probably hominids. We probably hunted them for competition. The herbivores eating our crops. The same reason why animals go extinct today. And we have to remember, as I said before, you cannot squeeze or fit science into God's word. But what we have to do is start from the Bible to explain the world around us, including dinosaurs.